people either have a vision of a utopian wonderland out there that we're going to create all this amazing stuff with AI, or on the flip side, everybody thinks it's going to be a dystopian wasteland when we start using AI, and everybody's going to be out of work and the robots are going to take over and humanity is going to cease to exist. And it's very difficult to find anybody that has that middle ground. But it's conversations like we're having here that's going to allow us to establish that middle ground. And as we continue to educate the public, and as we continue to expose these tools and teach people how to use these tools and let them know the limitations of these tools as they exist today, I think more and more people are going to become more and more comfortable with the integration of AI as tools and not replacements.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Here's the first part of our Clubhouse discussion about sound in social media. There are just some discussions that lend themselves to more than one perspective. That's definitely the case with this subject matter, and I had a Clubhouse room full of experts that had a lot to say about it. They were Ross Brand, founder of Livestream Universe and author of the 100 Live Streaming and Digital Media Predictions series. He's at livestreamuniverse.com. Chris Stone, chief content entrepreneur at Castahead, and he's at castahead.net. Sara Losi, president of Favorite Daughter Media, and I love that name, and author of Open This Book, The Art of Storytelling for Aspiring Thought Leaders. She's at openthisbook.com. And Larry Roberts, CEO of Red Hat Media and co-host of the branded podcast With Sara, and he's at larryroberts.com. We covered a lot of information on sound in social media, as you would expect, but we also delved into, and my panelists will love that I use that word, how AI is shaping that landscape, for better or worse. It was a fascinating and fun discussion, and I'm glad to be able to share it with you now. If you'd like to be able to join these Clubhouse rooms yourself, join the Power of Sound House and keep an eye on the schedule. There's always interesting sound-related topics coming up. And for those of you that want a more comprehensive experience in Clubhouse while using whatever mic you like on your desktop, PC, or Mac, you can check out a software program called ClubDeck at clubdeck.app. And no, they're not a sponsor. I just love their program and use it all the time. Of course, if you enjoy this, I hope you'll give the podcast a review. That would be so helpful and appreciated. I love doing this, but I never know who's listening, so tell me. And now, here's our Clubhouse discussion about sound in social media. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are going to talk about the power of sound in social media, which, it has its place. And some people would say that it doesn't have as much of a place as maybe it should. So we're going to discuss that. But I want to get us started with asking people to introduce themselves briefly so that we know who you are and what your area of expertise is in this topic and in other topics. And then let us know what you find to be the most effective use of sound for your social media posts. So I'd love to start with Ross, if you can unmute and let us know who you are and what you use sound in social media for.
Sure. I'm Ross Brand. I am a live streamer, been live streaming since 2015. I also have a background in radio, worked on air for about 12 years. And more recently, I'm also an author of the 100 Live Streaming and Digital Media Predictions series, in which many of our panelists here have been contributors. So I would say for social media, it's a lot of trial and error. But if you can come up with something consistent, even if it's very brief, whether it's the way you introduce yourself, whether it's certain pieces of background music, it's something that's memorable, and it just helps people identify that it's you. But with social media, it's interesting because sometimes you have to change it up as well, which kind of goes against some of the rules of sonic branding. I think when you look at branding a company or a show, for example.
Yeah, very true, Ross. It's one of those things where there are certain pieces of your sonic branding that you can use on a regular basis, and consistent repetition is definitely helpful there. And but people don't always turn on their sound, so it's a definite challenge.
Right.
Yeah. I want to get Chris to introduce himself, and Chris, if you can let people know how you use sound in your social media, that'd be great too.
Thanks, Jodi, not just for having me on, but making me follow the legend that is Ross Brand, and having to try to be as eloquent as he is. But my name is Chris Stone. I have a company called Cast Ahead, castahead.net, and I work with motivated entrepreneurs to do a show. Because as many know, they want a show, they just don't want to know how all this stuff works, and we do that for them. I also co-host a show on Amazon with my buddy Jim Fuse. It's called Dealcasters, and we go live in the biggest mall of the world and talk about things like podcasting and how you should speak into a mic and live streaming and all that good stuff. But Jodi, I love this
fantastic show, just so people know. Yes, I've been on the show, not just because I've been on the show, but it is a fantastic
our show got better that day for sure. So thank you for that. And I was like, oh gosh, my sound needs to be as equally amazing as Jodi Krangle's now.
Well, you're doing just fine. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
No, thank you. And I love this topic, and because I work with multiple shows, not just my own, and audio and branding with video. Many people forget that when you are doing something on video and social media, the most important thing is your audio. And people will stick around if you've got things that are flying by and a thumbprint on your lens. But if your audio is not clearly understood, they're gone. And so that is a huge component of what I do. And each one of the shows that I produce and that are part of my agency, each has a very, very articulate social and audio brand. So that when you click on a particular show that my team works on, it doesn't look like me, it looks like them. And so it's important that audio is a part of that. And with social media, it's important that your story that you're telling, probably in 59 seconds or less, has an audio component, music, etc., that tells that story as best you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree on that. I want to ask Larry, thanks for being here, Larry. Do you have, can you introduce yourself first and let us know how you use sound in your social media?
Hi, I'm Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
No, seriously. Sound has been everything for me, honestly, since dropping into the podcast space back in 2014. It's really allowed me to build a personal brand, build a business, and actually walk away from my corporate career back in 2021. So sound has been absolutely essential.
Congratulations.
In everything that I do. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm currently the CEO of Red Hat Media. So most people out there know me as the Red Hat guy in the podcast space, and even beyond now, the Red Hat brand is kind of growing in a variety of different verticals. So it's interesting to see that happen. But Sarah's also going to introduce herself shortly, and Sara and I own a business called Branded, where we use the power of sound for our podcast, and we use that to help other individuals do the same things that we do by building a strong personal brand, with the foundation of that being in the podcast space. So that's basically what we do, and Sara will talk more about how we do it, I'm sure, when she introduces herself as well.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Larry. Sara, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Sara Losi, or as Ross Brand would call me, Larry's co-host. We co-host the Branded podcast, and I run Favorite Daughter Media and Branded Media with Larry. And we launch podcasts for businesses and entrepreneurs, and I work with people on telling their story. So for me, audio is all about storytelling. So using things like a podcast or even videos with the audio to just be able to tell your story in your own voice has been really, really powerful. So now I focus on helping others do that.
Perfect. Yeah. Wonderful. Sara, I want to ask you more how you do use sound to engage people with your storytelling. Are there any particular tips that you have for people?
I think with social media, we rely so heavily on things like video. And similar to what Chris was saying, the audio is so important. So making sure that you're choosing the video clips that have you sounding really authentic and really genuine, and the ones that have you telling pieces of your story rather than something that's just maybe sounds more like an ad, or it's just maybe a little bit of a joke. Really honing in on those stories and telling them in your authentic voice is really going to help you connect with other people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Chris, I wanted to ask you in particular if there are ways that that you use it in social media to stand out and grab their attention.
Of course, a lot of social media uses captioning, and for hearing impaired or someone that has an app that doesn't want the audio to pop up, it's important. Some people will listen with the volume off, or not listen with the volume off. You know what I'm saying? Watch with the volume
Yeah.
off, and so it's important. I think the struggle that I see with a lot of people, and maybe some folks that are listening have this struggle, and a lot of the clients that I deal with currently, or people that I'm having conversations with throughout the week, their struggle is they have an audio podcast, and they've had it for maybe even years, and they have a really great impact in that audio space, and they just can't figure out how to incorporate the video into it, because they're seeing all of these people who are podcasting, and they're seeing the video, and they're seeing really great, impactful video. And so now they're trying to take this, do the whole square peg through the round hole thing. How do I incorporate video into my audio podcast? And the most simple way to do it is to take that phone that's in your pocket or your webcam or whatever and fire that thing up while you're recording. In fact, right now I'm recording a video while I'm speaking to you. And this will be content that I'm going to be using for my own social media afterwards.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't think about that. They think about the live event itself. They don't think about preparing for whatever this live event is and capturing that, and then taking that content and using it for years, even long after we've gone from the earth. So I really believe that you just, the easiest way to do it is to put in those reps, right? But don't put in the reps just to do video. Pop up in your video while you're in a comfortable space, while you're recording your audio, and then eventually you're ready. You're ready to go prime time with that video, because the audio component is the most important thing, but it's the video that you're seeing on all the social media that we just can't forget.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love doing this podcast. I'll do it regardless of whether or not anyone listens. And isn't that why we do this? For the passion of it? That said, it does take a lot of coffee to do this. So as an experiment, I set up a really simple Buy Me a Coffee page. And I've already been blown away by your generosity. Today, I want to highlight Kai Bronner and the International Sound Awards, who very kindly bought this podcast 5 coffees. That ought to keep us going for a while. Thank you so much. And it's been my absolute pleasure to be a jury member for the International Sound Awards. I love your mission of making the world sound better. And you really do assemble all the best talent from around the world. I've been super impressed. And I'm looking forward to having more of them on this podcast. Andrea Chera, Chris Hegstrom, and Rajiv Raja are all jury members that have been on this podcast in the past, in case you want to learn more about them. And if you're interested in checking out what the ISA does, you can visit their website at international-sound-awards.com. Keep up the great work, and thanks again. Larry, I know you told me that you do that as well, right? You video yourself while you're on audio-only events like this?
Actually, it's one of my most viewed videos was the time that I actually did that here in a Clubhouse room and then posted it as an example of ways people can leverage Clubhouse to create additional content. So it works extremely well. And people love the opportunity. When you share that idea, it's like, oh my God, I never thought to do that. But it's super simple. We're already here. Like Chris was saying, just set your phone up on a tripod, hit that record button, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to get some more content. So yeah, I love that idea. Larry, we were actually, while we're talking about this kind of thing, where do you think AI fits into all of this? Because I know you're about to do a whole event with PodFest, right?
Yeah, we do have a big event coming up starting on the 19th, I think is the first. It's like the pre-show day. So that's a full day of talks that are going down. And then the following Monday through Wednesday, all 3 days are packed full of AI content generation and ways that we can leverage AI and leverage the power of sound and bring those two together. It's very difficult to predict exactly where we're going with this, but it's really interesting. I was watching a video this morning on YouTube, because that's kind of what you have to do to stay on top of what's going on in the AI world. It's evolving so quickly. And it was fully produced with AI. The voice was cloned. The video, the presenter was created on Synthesia, which is an amazing website if you want to build an avatar and then put your voice behind that avatar. They do an amazing job of bringing those two together. But I think we're going to continue to see an evolution of the technology, and I think it's going to become more and more accessible to us as content creators. And as it becomes more accessible, it's going to be interesting to see what it does to voice-driven industries, because these voices, they don't sound robotic. They sound emotional. They sound sincere. They sound real. And the more we see the evolution of these synthesized voices coming to the forefront, it's going to be very, very difficult to understand what's real and what's not, and where we as sound-based content creators can still fit into that equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tricky situation, I think, for most voice talent, especially, like that's where my world is. I think that part of my hesitation with AI voices, and I'm sure that all of you have an opinion on this, and people are welcome to put their opinions in the room chat or ask any further questions if you have any for the panelists here. My issue with AI voices has always been that they don't pronounce names or places properly, and that the emphasis in certain words is wrong. So it's not that the voice itself doesn't sound like it's an actual voice. There's no artifacts anymore. It actually has gotten really good. But the emotion that goes into the actual up and down of a real sentence that a human being would say is still kind of missing. And you can program it to do different things. And I'm sure that a lot of people have spent hours doing that. But I just am not a big proponent of the voice being AI if you actually care about your brand. I hate to put it that way, but audio branding is my jam. And when we're talking about audio branding, if you're cheaping out on your brand, people are going to know.
Yeah,
So,
I don't disagree, Jodi, especially at this stage of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But what's scary is we start looking at it 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and see where we're at. And the way things are progressing and at the speed that they're progressing, it's not going to be long before it's indistinguishable. I don't know if you've seen any examples of Sora. It's OpenAI's latest platform, and they've got it down to really well now, but it's not available to the public just yet. But it's from the videos that I've seen, it is 100% indistinguishable from something that is filmed in real life. The detail, the motion capture, the angles, it's insane how accurate it really is and how real it really looks. And I think we really need to take note as vocal artists, whether we're professional voiceover artists like yourself, or whether we're professional podcasters or live streamers or anybody that's using audio. You have to be aware of what's happening, because if we're not aware and we don't start making the adjustments that we need to make this early in the game, we're going to wake up in 12 months and go, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. And if anyone else on the panel has any thoughts on this, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Ross, have you used any AI in any of your stuff?
I've used AI tools, but not as a replacement for myself. I've used, I've used a script, which has a studio setting, which uses AI to automatically kind of, without you having to set a bunch of parameters, it can upgrade your audio quality. I haven't done it a lot, but I played with that. I also, if I get some audio that I want to use and it isn't the highest quality, a lot of times as a first step, I'll throw it into Auphonic, which is like an AI processing.
Is that from Adobe?
App. Auphonic is not from Adobe.
I was talking with Jamie Muffett. He is also a voice talent, but he's a podcast producer as well. And he did talk about the Adobe product that you can run your podcast through if the audio is less than great. So yeah, there are some really interesting ideas out there where AI can kind of take what's there and extrapolate and fill out what it thinks should be there as a result of what it's already hearing. And so it makes it better. There's a certain percentage. It's like a sliding rule, I guess. Like you can decide you want to update, or fill out up to 60% or 70% or something like that. And, it's a lighter touch if it's less percentage. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just to chime in on this, I use a lot and probably not maybe half as many as what Larry, because that's really his swimming pool. I'm just I'm over here on the duck pond. But in terms of the AI audio applications, yes, they are absolutely getting better. They still are, in my opinion, a ways from replacing true storytelling and the true nuance of the human voice. And sure, I want it to be great, but a lot like Ross had mentioned, Descript has some fantastic functions. And it is taking me longer to try to get something that I said or one of my clients said incorrectly to get them to say something where it doesn't sound like I just inserted audio. And it doesn't feel fluid. It doesn't have, natural disfluencies that people's voice has. And you hear me say, and things like that. At this point, I'm leaving ums in for the most part, unless it's completely unnecessary, because this is how I speak. And this is how my clients speak. And something that's over edited, when you actually see somebody on a stage, it's like, this is not the person that I've been listening to for however many episodes. And so it's in my opinion, it's still got a ways to go. It's ramping up very quickly. And I feel like I'm not going to be crass here, but there was someone that said, I don't know how to define pornography. I just know it when I see it.
Yeah.
And when I hear something that's been generated with AI, I know it. And maybe because I listen to audio, as a part of my business, and it's a big part of what I do. You can just tell it's getting better, though. I will definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sara, where do you stand on all of this? I'm curious as to your opinion.
I am actually in a weird position because my business partner is Larry Roberts. So
that would be a weird position anyway.
True. But he's the AI guy. So I feel like I know bits and pieces about all of these different AI tools, but I don't understand them that much because I don't have to, because I just push it to him. But I've definitely used like Adobe Podcast to fix up some audio, and I thought that's really helpful. What I don't necessarily do is use AI to the degree that some people do it for content creation. I'll do it for ideas, but kind of like what was said before, it's still about those genuine stories. So you can't have AI write your own story. Larry might disagree, but you need to really still have your own voice in there. So using it for ideas and for fixing up those audios is great, but I don't think it'll ever replace like personal storytelling.
Yeah.
I use AI to tell stories regularly, and it is very effective.
Is that the real Larry or not?
I always love it when it mispronounces actual words that are like, are you really? Like he just said effectively.
Yeah.
It'll say something like that. And you're like, really?
Yeah.
After I said it, I was sitting here wishing, going, man, I should have messed up a word. That was too accurate.
Oh my goodness. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, I just want to highlight something that Chris said that's really important. He talked about how if you take out every to the point where, your audio can almost sound inauthentic and not really sound like the person. As we want to be using video on social media with our audio, because video is often the scroll stopper in the feed. If you take out your ahs and your ums and your pauses and all that, your audio, your video is either going to have 1,000 jump cuts, or it's going to look very strange. It's not going to be aligned. Your mouth will be moving and nothing will come out. So you have to think about that as well. I think sometimes people in the podcasting space are over aggressive with that. It wasn't something when I was working in radio that we went back in, if we were going to take from a show and make it into a segment, and focused on, I better cut out every ah and and pause and so forth. It kind of, from a storytelling perspective, it's how people communicate.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ross. And I think that there's a bunch of people who are going very heavily into the authenticity sphere, if you know what I mean. Like we are videoing ourselves on phones and putting it up on TikTok, right? After 5 seconds, no one's editing anything, right? So if you're putting out a podcast and you are wanting it to be perfect, with the use of AI, I guess it could be technically perfect, but it doesn't reach your heart. It doesn't really speak to, as Sara was saying, the storytelling aspect of it.
Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be. Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers, and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast.
What do you think about that, Larry? I mean, are we going too far into the perfection when we use AI and missing out on the authenticity part?
I think we are at this stage of the game for sure, because we're still uneducated when it comes to, and honestly, the AI platforms themselves, the large language model behind the platforms that are actually producing the content, they're still uneducated. At least from a general public's perspective. What they can do hasn't really been released to us just yet, but it's still so early in the game, and they're still working through ethical AI applications. And this is a conversation that oftentimes gets overlooked. How do we leverage AI safely and ethically? Now, regardless of what we do from an ethical perspective, AI is going to, it's going to displace some positions. It's going to displace some careers. It's going to displace some professions. But at the same time, it's going to open up other professions and other avenues for creators like ourselves to leverage these new tools and use them to even reach a larger audience. Can we do that right now? No, it's just not there just yet. It's just like, we're talking about the power of sound here, but one of my most frustrating aspects of AI is when we try to use image generation, whether you're using DALL-E or whether you're using Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or whatever platform you're using to create images. They're really, I still say they're unpredictable. You can make some really cool looking images. I mean, just some really beautiful looking artwork. But when you try to go create an image and you try to reuse that same format of that image and you try to create actual content, you still struggle. I mean, everything still struggles with words. Everything still struggles with even just hands. A lot of people still, when when you draw an image of someone, they have 6 fingers or 7 fingers, or they may even have 3 arms.
It's very strange.
So it's super strange, and it's just not there yet. And that's, again, that's where we're at with the audio side of AI generated content as well. But if we have these conversations like we're having right now, I mean, I was recently on little personal plug. I was recently on ABC here in the DFW Metroplex,
And congratulations.
Thank you. And the hostess, she asked me, she goes, what are you hearing from parents? Because we were actually talking about AI proofing our children. How do we prepare our children for an AI driven future? And she goes, what are parents saying out there? And it's not just parents that are saying this. I'm hearing this from everyone. People either have a vision of a utopian wonderland out there that we're going to create all this amazing stuff with AI, or on the flip side, everybody thinks it's going to be a dystopian wasteland when we start using AI, and everybody's going to be out of work and the robots are going to take over
It's
and
Terminator.
humanity's going to cease to exist. And it's very difficult to find anybody that has that middle ground. But it's conversations like we're having here that's going to allow us to establish that middle ground. And as we continue to educate the public, and as we continue to expose these tools and teach people how to use these tools and let them know the limitations of these tools as they exist today, I think more and more people are going to become more and more comfortable with the integration of AI as tools and not replacements, because we still, emotional intelligence and a high EQ is what's critical, especially during this transition. So we as creators, we have that emotional intelligence. We have that high EQ that AI simply cannot replicate. And regardless of where AI goes in the future, that EQ and that ability to adapt, that ability to engage in a variety of diverse, different platforms and different arenas is going to be absolutely critical for everybody, whether you're a creator, whether you're a professional, it doesn't matter. The emotional intelligence still continues to lead the charge. And it's the same way when we look at it from an audio perspective.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Go ahead,
Man,
Chris.
I went off on a tangent. Sorry.
Oh, it was a good tangent, actually. I'm interested in the whole future and what we're leaving for our kids, Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I was applauding on mute, Larry. That was fantastic. And I caught that clip on ABC. I have not been on ABC, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So plug for Holiday Inn.
Congrats, dude. You're moving on up.
This show is sponsored by so here's the thing. So, that whole thing that I just said, AI is not going to be able to generate, at least not now, until NVIDIA, creates this supercomputer that apparently will clone your voice in 15 seconds or whatever. I think perfection, Jodi, to your question, is boring. It's absolutely boring.
I agree.
And if there's anything that social media has taught us is that, call it authenticity, call it real talk, whatever, is that people want to see something that they can connect with, something that's a little bit more like themselves. And so if you're looking for AI to generate some other version of you, you're going to disconnect some people. And, but there's a fine line. And this is really what I stress, is that if you're treating social media as like I'm popping up my phone, I'm doing a 15-second, dance, or I'm just whipping it out. If that can create a rep and it speaks to your audience and it gets you, on the bike, so to speak, and gets going with generating some sort of content, awesome. But I stress with the people that I work with and myself to be excellent. Because if you're excellent at what you do, and I don't care if it's pest control or if it's AI generation or if it's you're a shoe salesman doing a podcast, whatever, by the way, there is one. And,
there's a shoe salesman doing a podcast.
Sure, of course.
Of course.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Because a lot of people are using these things because they say, oh, let me check the box of doing social media and I'm just going to get this thing on AppSumo or this app here and I'm going to throw it in this thing and it's going to spit out a bunch of content for me and I'm just going to pick one of these 15 things and then I'm just going to schedule it out and just scatter shot all of this media out into the world. And then they expect that to hit. And they expect people to connect with you. But what's happening is you're just adding to this huge pile in the center of mediocrity. And instead, we should take this opportunity as creators to be excellent and stand apart and to say, I can do something that is different than that. I didn't say better. I said different. And that is our opportunity to, like Larry said, I love that he is not a fear-based AI person. It's like, you're going to have to work with this stuff. AI is eventually going to be like electricity. It's just going to be there. And it's just something that you're going to have to incorporate in whatever you're doing. And don't be afraid of it. Utilize it and be excellent at what you do and what you're most passionate about.
This has been part 1 of our Clubhouse discussion. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time,